She looked like just another woman dining alone in a crowded restaurant. Quiet, calm, unbothered. But in exactly 15 seconds, 3 arrogant men were about to learn a lesson they would never forget, because the woman they thought was powerless was Delta Force. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from and make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. It was a Friday night in Atlanta. Marcel's Grill House was packed, the air alive with laughter, the clinking of silverware, and the soft hum of jazz music in the background. People leaned across tables to share stories about their week. Couples toasted with glasses of wine, and waiters hurried from one end of the room to the other with trays full of food. To everyone inside, it felt like just another night. But in the far corner, sitting alone with a plate of pasta and a glass of water, was Angela Cole. Angela was 34 years old, calm, and strikingly composed. She wasn't dressed to stand out. A black leather jacket rested over her shoulders. Her jeans were plain, and her sneakers were scuffed from long use. But anyone who paid attention to her eyes might have noticed something unusual. They were sharp, focused, as if they had seen things most people couldn't even imagine. To the world, Angela was just another woman eating dinner after a long day. But the truth ran much deeper. She was one of the most highly trained soldiers in the United States Army, a member of the elite Delta Force. Very few even knew women served in that unit, and fewer still could ever guess that the woman sitting quietly in the corner of a crowded restaurant had once led covert missions in the most dangerous corners of the world. Angela didn't care about being recognized. She wanted peace, quiet, and a hot meal. But peace is fragile, and it can be shattered in an instant. At a table near the bar, 3 men in tailored suits were laughing louder than everyone else. Ethan, Cole, and Bradley considered themselves untouchable. They were businessmen with money, connections, and a habit of getting whatever they wanted, no matter who they had to step on to get it. Tonight, the whiskey in their glasses only fueled their arrogance. Ethan spotted Angela first. He leaned back in his chair, smirking as he nodded toward her table. Look at her, sitting there like she owns the place. Bradley chuckled, swirling the ice in his glass, probably waiting for someone to buy her dinner. Typical. Cole leaned forward, his smirk twisting into something darker. Let's go teach her a little lesson. She needs to know her place. The 3 of them stood up. Their movements were slow, unsteady from the alcohol, but their intentions were clear. The sound of their footsteps made a few diners glance nervously at Angela, who sat unaware of the storm walking straight toward her. Angela twirled the last bite of pasta onto her fork and lifted it to her mouth. She didn't even look up when the shadow of 3 men fell over her table. She finished chewing, placed the fork down, and finally raised her eyes to meet theirs. Ethan smirked down at her. "The seat taken, sweetheart?" Angela's voice was calm, steady, and sharp enough to cut through the noise around them. "Yes. By me?" Bradley laughed, leaning down far too close. "Feisty. You should smile more. Don't you know who we are?" Angela's expression didn't change. She placed her napkin gently on the table and replied, "I don't care who you are. You're in my space. Step back." The restaurant seemed to quiet. Conversation slowed. Forks paused midair, and eyes turned toward the corner table. Everyone knew trouble was about to unfold. Cole sneered. "You don't tell us what to do. Not here. Not ever." His hand twitched as he reached toward Angela's arm. That was when Angela's eyes sharpened. The calmness in her voice turned into something colder, more dangerous. She leaned forward just slightly and said, "I suggest you rethink that move." The 3 men laughed as if they had nothing to fear, but the diners who saw Angela's eyes knew something these men didn't. There was no fear in her, only control. 15 seconds. That was all it would take before arrogance collided with reality. The restaurant's atmosphere had shifted. Where there had once been warmth and chatter, now there was silence, heavy and electric. Every eye was fixed on the corner table. Some diners looked uncomfortable, others fearful, but no one moved. It was as if the entire room was waiting to see what would happen next. Angela didn't flinch. She remained seated, calm as ever, her posture loose but her mind calculating. She had measured the men the moment they approached. Their drunken swagger, their sloppy movements, the arrogance in their tone. She knew within seconds she could dismantle them, but she gave them a chance, a single warning. Cole sneered as he reached out, his fingers hovering just inches from her jacket. Angela's voice came again, low and steady. Last warning. Don't. He grinned. Or what? And that was it. In one fluid motion, faster than anyone could register, Angela moved. Her chair slid back just slightly as her hand shot up, locking around Cole's wrist. The sound was sharp, like with snapping, as his arm twisted under her grip. His arrogant smirk dissolved into a scream that filled the restaurant. Before Ethan or Bradley could react, Angela was already in motion. She rose to her feet, twisting Cole's arm behind his back and slamming him chest first against the table. Silverware clattered, glasses toppled, and a plate shattered on the floor. Gasps erupted from the diners around them. Bradley cursed and lunged forward, swinging clumsily at her. Without even looking, Angela ducked, released Cole's arm, and used her shoulder to drive into Bradley's chest. He stumbled backward, crashing into a nearby chair and sprawling onto the floor. That left Ethan. For a moment, his confidence wavered as he realized this wasn't going the way he expected, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. He roared and charged at her, his fists raised like a street brawler. Angela sidestepped smoothly, her movements precise, controlled. She caught his arm as he swung and used his own momentum against him, flipping him clean over her hip. Ethan landed hard on his back, the air rushing out his lungs in a single, pathetic gasp. The entire restaurant froze in stunned silence. 3 men who had walked in with swagger now lay broken and humiliated in front of a woman who hadn't even broken a sweat. Angela stood tall, her breathing calm, her eyes sweeping the room. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't showing off. She was simply making a point. She looked down at the men groaning on the floor. Next time, she said coldly, think before you act. And just like that, she turned back to her table, pulled her chair in, and calmly picked up her glass of water. The contrast was shocking. A storm had erupted and ended in 15 seconds, and Angela was back to eating dinner as if nothing had happened. The whispers began to spread through the restaurant. Who is she? She took them out like it was nothing. She didn't even look scared. The manager rushed over, pale and frantic, his hands shaking. Ma'am, I am so sorry. I'll call the police immediately. Angela shook her head. Don't. They've already embarrassed themselves enough. Ethan groaned from the floor, clutching his side. You're going to pay for this. Angela's eyes locked on him, her voice sharp as steel. No, you already did. The weight of her words silenced him. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he realized he wasn't dealing with an ordinary woman. Something about her gaze carried the weight of experience, the authority of someone who had faced death before and survived. And though he didn't know it yet, the humiliation they suffered in those 15 seconds was only the beginning. The restaurant was still buzzing with shock. Diners whispering in clusters, replaying what they had just seen. Some had filmed snippets on their phones, already uploading shaky clips to social media. Within minutes, the story would spread far beyond the 4 walls of Marcel's grill house. Angela quietly asked for the check, but the manager rushed to shake his head. No, your meal is on the house. Please, forgive us. We should have intervened sooner. This is unacceptable. Angela's voice was calm. You don't need to apologize for their behavior. Just make sure it doesn't happen again to anyone else. Cole, still wincing and holding his twisted wrist, spat from the floor. You think this is over? Do you have any idea who we are? You'll regret this. Angela finished the last sip of her water, her eyes cutting to him like blades. You're right. I have no idea who you are. And that should tell you everything about how important you really are. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The 3 men who were used to power and privilege, suddenly looked small, pathetic, broken. The police eventually arrived, called not by Angela, but by a worried diner. Ethan, Cole, and Bradley immediately jumped at the chance to spin the story in their favor. They exaggerated, lied, and shouted over each other, claiming they were the victims of an unprovoked attack. Angela stood silently as the officers approached. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply handed over her identification and waited. The officers looked down at her ID and their eyes widened. One officer quickly straightened, his tone shifting immediately. "Ma'am, please forgive us. We didn't realize." Angela gave him a slight nod. "I'll handle this myself." The officers exchanged uneasy glances but did as she asked. They took statements from witnesses, all of whom confirmed Angela had acted in self-defense. Still, the three men screamed for her arrest, demanding she be punished. Their voices carried out into the night, echoing to the flashing blue lights of the police cars. But the real reckoning wouldn't come at the restaurant. It came days later. The setting shifted to a sleek, glass-walled boardroom in downtown Atlanta. Ethan, Cole, and Bradley sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by their lawyers and senior staff. Their company, an investment firm known for aggressive deals and questionable ethics, had been thrown into chaos, not because of Angela's actions, but because of the videos now circulating online. Clips of the confrontation had gone viral. Millions had watched the three men get dismantled in seconds by a woman who never lost her composure. Comment sections were filled with outrage. Hashtags trended across platforms. The men were mocked, ridiculed, and condemned. Their reputations were collapsing. The board had called an emergency meeting, and they had called in Angela Cole. When she walked into the room, dressed in a fitted black blazer and slacks, the atmosphere changed instantly. The chatter died. Every head turned. She carried herself with quiet authority, her stride measured, her expression unreadable. Ethan's face drained the color. What are you doing here?" Angela placed a file on the table, her voice steady. "I was asked to speak, and you're going to listen." The chairman of the board cleared his throat nervously. "Ms. Cole, before we proceed, perhaps you could clarify for everyone exactly who you are?" Angela's eyes swept the room before she spoke. "Angela Cole, former United States Army, current operative with Delta Force." The words landed like thunder. Some gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Ethan, Cole, and Bradley froze, their arrogance collapsing into stunned silence. Angela continued, "You three men tried to intimidate me in a public space. You assumed I was powerless because of the color of my skin and because I was a woman dining alone. You assumed wrong." Her tone hardened. "But this isn't about me. This is about a culture you built. A culture of entitlement, abuse, and arrogance. And it ends now." The boardroom was silent. Every eye was on her, and not one person dared to interrupt. Angela leaned forward slightly, her voice sharp and commanding. "I don't need to punish you. You've already destroyed yourselves. The videos show exactly who you are. The world has judged you, and now your own company will too." The chairman cleared his throat again, his face grave. "Effective immediately. Ethan, Cole, Bradley, you are suspended, pending investigation. The board will vote on your permanent removal. Consider your influence here over." The three men erupted in protest, shouting over each other. "This is ridiculous. She set us up. We're the victims here." Angela stood tall, her gaze icy. "No, you're not victims. You're a warning. And I hope you remember that the next time you decide to look down on someone you think is beneath you." With that, she turned and walked out. Her footsteps echoed down the hall, steady and unhurried. Behind her, the boardroom dissolved into chaos. But Angela didn't look back. She had done what she came to do. The boardroom fallout spread quickly. News outlets ran the story. Headlines screamed about the viral restaurant confrontation, and commentators dissected every second of the footage. For once, the public wasn't divided. Everyone could see what had happened. Three men had tried to humiliate a woman they thought was powerless, and in seconds, their arrogance had been exposed to the world to see. The company announced sweeping reforms. Diversity and inclusion training wasn't just a suggestion anymore. It became mandatory. A new zero-tolerance harassment policy was introduced, with Angela herself invited to consult on its structure. Within weeks, leadership shifted. Fresh faces, more representative of the community, took their seats at the board table where arrogance once ruled. Angela didn't bask in the attention. She avoided interviews, declined invitations to talk shows, and refused to make herself the center of the story. When reporters pressed her, she gave the same answer every time. This isn't about me. It's about justice, respect, and accountability. But inside, she reflected on that night. She thought about how quickly arrogance could turn into violence, how fragile dignity could feel in the face of power abused. She thought about the young women who might one day sit in a restaurant, facing the same kind of treatment she had. That was why she spoke out, not for herself, but for them. Ethan, Cole, and Bradley disappeared from public life. Their downfall was swift and merciless. Business partners cut ties, investors fled, and even longtime allies distanced themselves. Their names became cautionary tales whispered in hushed tones in boardrooms across the city. Angela, meanwhile, returned to her life of quiet strength. She resumed her duties, training, and service, never once flaunting her background. But those who knew her now knew better than to underestimate her. She had turned one night of injustice into a lesson for an entire community. On her last visit to Marcel's grill house, the staff greeted her like family. The same manager who had once trembled with apologies now approached her with pride. "Because of you, we've changed," he told her. "Our staff knows better. We won't let anything like that happen here again." Angela simply nodded. "Good. That's all that matters." As she walked back out into the night, the city lights reflected in her eyes. She knew there would always be more battles to fight, more arrogance to confront, more justice to demand. But she also knew this truth. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't the strike of a fist or the flash of a badge. Sometimes it's the courage to stand firm, to act with dignity, and to remind the world that respect is not optional, it's required. She left the restaurant the same way she had entered it. Quiet, calm, unbothered. But this time, the world outside knew her strength, and they would never forget it. If this story moved you, comment wherever you're watching from the world. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire courage, demand justice, and prove that respect is never optional.